Cause I can read between the lines, I ain't blind. We unwind what they're really saying, genetically modify what you're tasting. Loan you that college promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics, keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid, you're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome to Season 4 of Rogue Ways. In almost 2 years, we have come a long way, and I have been blessed enough to bring you some fire-ass content that stands the test of time. People new to the show often contact me and rave about how awesome it is to dig through the archives, and I couldn't be happier. Tonight, to get Season 4 started off right, we are going to get yet another perspective on the cult of Christianity and the occult truth behind it. We're going to talk about dogma. We are going to talk about spirituality. We are going to talk about all kinds of secular and spiritual content tonight, and we are going to do so with my guest, Steve Schneider. Steve came to me with some ideas about spirituality and our place on this plane, and Steve is a good friend through Austin Beach. And Steve, you guys work together on Broken Bard Studios content, or what's the
Yeah, we're making a show together called Wordtastic. It's actually a kids show.
Awesome. Oh,
which
yeah, that looks so good.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. So you guys do lots of content in that regard, and you're just a deep thinker and an awesome person. So I'm excited to have you here tonight, Steve. But before we get started, let me remind you guys to check out rogueways.org for all kinds of writings, tarot, readings, Oregon pendants, my published novels and books, and merch of all different types and kinds. So go check that stuff out. And please consider sharing value back with me if you have gained value from watching or listening to Rogue Ways over the years. I greatly appreciate people who are purchasing whatnot from the site, but I also really love my Subscribe Star subscribers. There is more content there. It is unique to Subscribe Star. It is in addition to the free content I provide here on Rogue Ways. And so if you want to check that out and be a part of that, or if you just feel like you want to subscribe to support the show, I greatly appreciate it. There is even a dollar level. 100% of you, I think, can afford the dollar level or higher, and I really appreciate that support. That is how I keep going. I don't make money from the show, but I at least make enough back to pay for my equipment and storage fees. So thank you so much for supporting and helping this to carry on. I love it. It's my passion project. And now, Steve, we always start Rogue Ways with a pointless question of the episode, and that, unlike the intro song and ending song, are not changing in Season 4. So for the pointless question of the episode, I wanted to ask you, when pallets of bricks appear beside you, just magically out of nowhere, do you begin to pick them up and throw them, or do you stop and wonder, where did they come from?
Probably the latter. We've been hearing a lot of news about mysterious pallets of bricks appearing. Sounds eerily reminiscent of like the train cars full of ammunition and guns that mysteriously show up in ghetto communities that we've heard in years past. Nice. Who sent them? So, good call.
I heard it also plays a similar role to something that happened in Nazi Germany, which is interesting because a lot of, even though the left screams Nazi Germany a lot, it's interesting how much they seem to mirror Nazi Germany themselves. And it's like whatever they're sort of spewing out, and I'm not left or right, but whatever they seem to spew out is exactly what they're doing. It's interesting. It's like they're just always tattling on themselves in that way.
Yeah, they never seem to pick up on that much, do they?
No.
Especially the Antifa groups out there. Fight fascism, or I'm going to smash your face with force.
Yes. Fight fascism. I'm going to force you to speak only things that I approve.
That's exactly right.
Okay, we're going to stop you from talking, and that's somehow fighting fascism.
Right.
Okie dokie. Yeah, these brick pallets at the very least are being noticed by some of the protesters, and that's been nice to see that they're like, you guys, this is a setup. Like, where did these come from? There's no construction around here. And so I'm glad some people are still, retaining their heads in the midst of the heat. But that's a pretty questionable, phenomenon.
That's one of the many thousands of questionable phenomena that we see on the internet, and so many people who are, oh God, you don't even need to be part of the truther community or a conspiracy theorist to start to notice some of this massive bullshit that's going on that just makes no sense whatsoever. So, I mean, I'm coming here not with any special authority. In fact, I was thinking of not coming on, as I told you in private, because I was like, I don't want to add to all the bullshit out there. There's so much lies, there's so much misinformation, there's so much deception, purposeful and non-purposeful. There's people just repeating crap that they hear.
Right.
I don't know what's true. I don't know which end is up. It seems like the world's going crazy. It seems like truth itself has no meaning anymore because everybody's saying, no, it's these people. No, it's that these people. No, it's really Donald Trump.
Yeah.
No, it's not Donald Trump. It's really the Jews. Yeah. No, it's not the Jews. It's really the Illuminati. No, it's the Jesuits. Yeah. It's the Jesuits.
Right.
Like, no, the Jesuits, they work for the lizard people. And it's like...
No, so it's the blue avians, and it gets endless. I totally feel you, but the thing is, the fact that you can recognize that and bring it up and discuss it is proof that you probably have an actually very nuanced and highly thought out understanding of things, because people who are dead sure that they have the answer and that they're right are people who are usually pretty unintelligent and have not actually thought very deeply. They haven't asked questions, because it's just like, if you look, you can find these same types of quotes with the same type of content from a million different people that our society and culture holds as intelligent, and they are, to the extent that I the more I know, the more I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would call that basic phenomena dogmatism. If you're dogmatic, that's usually a term reserved for like stiff-necked religious people who say like, yeah, you got to do the X, Y, and Z, or you're going to burn in hell forever. And then people get turned off by that. And they're like, yeah, you guys are stupid. You're wrong. Right. To go out and insist that I know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You don't believe in me, go into hell. Yes. But then if you look at it more broadly, there's plenty of people that are dogmatic that have nothing to do with religion. They're not part of any church. There's feminists that are dogmatic. There's Antifa people that are dogmatic. There's far left progressives and far right identitarians that are dogmatic. Absolutely. It's like, I don't know. I've always been the kind of guy, and this is not to say that this is awesome either, because in a way it sucks, because I've never felt super sure about even what I believe.
Yeah.
Like I kind of think this makes sense, but I might kind of be wrong too.
Yeah.
So it's like, the problem with that is it kind of leaves you in a state of inertia where you really can't take any decisive action because you're not really sure which direction to go because you're afraid that direction might be wrong. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, no, and this is exactly what I'm saying is the sort of best way to be, as far as I know. I mean, if you are questioning everything all of the time, you're always going to get closer and closer to a possible truth. But even if you're ending up somewhere that's like not really where truth is, or not, it ends up not serving you at that time, you are open-minded enough to then question it and kind of move another direction. You're never dogmatic about it. And I think, like you're saying, there's some pain in that. It's like you're never quite sure, you're never resting somewhere. And but for me, at least, I'm a Sagittarius, and I love to move and change, and so for me it's like the most comfortable place to be. I'm like, yeah, everything is static, like there is nothing that is going to be constant. That's the whole point of the universe, right? The only constant is change, and so of course we're going to always keep moving and updating and going and achieving higher and higher levels and deeper understandings as we go. And that's a beautiful part of life. And I think that, again, the people who haven't found that and have chosen something, and are dogmatic about it, or at least are refusing to look at any other possibilities, are the people who they're stuck and they're stagnant, and they're gonna sit there who knows how long and stew in it and never go anywhere. And that's, I think, sad and unintelligent.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I think that at the end of the day, all our beliefs, everything that we feel is true about the world or ourselves or our country or whatever, at the end of the day, I feel like all perception in a way is faith-based, because we have to believe that the information that we're working off of, whatever that is, is true to the extent that we can dig into it. Most of us, let's be honest, we don't dig very far. You look up a couple BuzzFeed articles that have a little bit of a citation. You didn't read the scientific articles. Shut the fuck up. No, you didn't.
Some people do.
Nobody
Very,
does.
very,
Very few.
few. Yeah.
And then you get a bunch of people who are believing that guy actually researched those articles, but maybe he's just saying he researched the article. So it's like there's a credibility problem when everybody's not really knowing what's going on and trying to trust experts of a different flavor that they know what they're talking about, even if I don't know what I'm talking about. And you try to at least read the tea leaves of what's getting banned. And then it's like, oh, well, this is getting banned. Maybe they don't want us to know this. So what is it?
Or maybe they banned it because they want us to think that they don't want us to know it so that we go searching there.
Oh, God, that would be even worse.
Right? Though? These
reverse psychology.
Drive you crazy.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. And it's interesting, what makes an expert. Like, people look at me and they're like, you're an expert in your field. You have a master's in teaching and you are nationally board certified teaching. And I look at what I know about teaching and I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm an expert in the ways that I have experience teaching. That doesn't mean I know everything there is to know about it. It doesn't mean I know every type of way of educating a human. It doesn't mean that I'm an expert in every possible ideology concerned with teaching. So it's interesting, the things that we call experts are even very vague, what makes an expert, and then how much of an expert is that person. And, have you specifically gone and tested their ability to be sort of like we were talking about, malleable in the face of new information? Or, are you just trusting that they have a degree and that sounds nice, so they're an expert? I think the more you understand that these things are all very subjective, the better off you can be. But people don't even really understand, when we're saying what we're saying. If you're trying to explain to somebody, I'll make a claim and I'll try to back it up with evidence and I'll sort of say that I believe something. But even then, somewhere in my mind, I totally hold the possibility that that's bullshit. It's just where I'm at right now. And some people just don't get that. They're like, well, you said you thought it. And I'm like, well, I do think that right now. I just don't know that I'll think that next week or next year or, it could change, and probably it will.
A lot of whatever our expertise is, it boils down to the signals we look at for symbols of expertise. Like you have a doctor before your name, or you have some kind of letters after your name to indicate what school you went to or what degree you have or what authority on which you are speaking.
Yes.
Or you have a bunch of citations in your article basically saying you read shit that other people wrote and you think that coincides with your particular flavor of belief. So that's the peer-reviewed process with more academic circles, right? But and even in a cultural sense, people listen to Jay-Z because, well, he's famous and he must know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Actually, I read part of an article about Anthony Fauci, and that a lot of people have listened to what he's saying, even though nobody elected this guy. He's the world guru for world health up until 5 minutes ago when nobody cared about the Wu flu anymore.
Yeah.
But just prior to that, everyone's listening to Anthony Fauci because he looks like a guy who would probably know what he's talking about. Yeah. Really, that's all it boils down to. That's as basic as it gets. Is you just got to look like you know what you're talking about, and people will listen to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is what I'm trying to point out to people. I'm like, whoever they is, they have our psychology so nailed down to a formula that, for example, they know that if they flash the color blue at the right time, we might eat less that day or something. Seriously, and it gets wild, how nuanced and detailed they can get into that. So to try and imagine that they're not using that against us all the time, and exactly like what you said, well, let's pick this guy to represent this idea because he looks like that and his hair is this color, all these things that I think they have boiled down to a science, literally. And I think people underestimate how easily controlled we are. And maybe that's a nice segue into the current riots and chaos, because I think that we are so easily controlled that this was entirely engineered to happen on purpose by whatever powers engineered it to be that way.
You're not alone in thinking that way. There's been plenty of people that have been under the assumption that whoever they are, and there's lots of people pointed or singled out as part of they.
Right.
They are definitely trying to control us. And we're seeing a lot of signs and indications with the destabilization of America with these riots. And just prior to that, a whole worldwide phenomena of a virus that was super deadly, but no, it's not super deadly. And then
Didn't really kill anyone.
10% die, and then no, 5%. Oh no, actually less than 1%.
Less than 1.
But actually, it doesn't exist at all. And I've heard every single one of those stories, and it's like, but we got to wear masks because they'll protect you, or they'll protect other people from you, because you might kill grandma if you go to visit and you're not wearing one. But then I hear other doctors saying, no, actually the mask is unhealthy because you need to interact with the environment to strengthen your immune system. And it's like, can I just stop this world and get off, please?
Yeah, like nothing.
You ever feel like that?
Sense. Absolutely.
Nothing makes sense. And they keep changing their friggin' story every other week. They're saying, no, don't wear masks. And then it's, yes, do wear masks. And then they pretend like last week they weren't saying the exact opposite of what they're saying this week.
Yes.
And by they, in that sense, I'm talking about the mainstream media.
Macro media, right?
Yeah. So it's like, it's really disheartening. It's discouraging. And perhaps that's by design. They're trying to get everybody hopelessly confused.
Absolutely.
So nobody knows which end is up. Nobody knows who's lying, who's telling the truth. You just come on the assumption that I guess everybody's lying.
Yeah.
Or I don't understand anything.
Every once in a while, I'm like, maybe they all actually believe all this shit, and that's how stupid they are. And they're just like, the shit floated to the surface, and that's who's up there right now. It's just idiots, and like they're literally doing the best they can. Every once in a while, I entertain that possibility. I'm like, could this literally just be people being stupid? Because it would be the ultimate end of the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know?
Yeah.
Like the stupidest people are at the top. So
right.
Maybe that's actually what's happening, and we just attribute way more malice and intelligence than they're even capable of. But I don't really think that, but I try to wonder every once in a while.
That might be part of it, for all I know. It's interesting you bring up Dunning-Kruger, because that's basically, to the extent that I understand it, ideology that goes into the notion that the people who think that they're talented or capable but aren't are drawing the same critical faculties towards themselves that they do to everyone else. In other words, they suck and they don't even realize that they suck. They think they're great.
Yes.
It's like,
they suck, they think they're great, and because they're so confident in their suckingness and not knowing that they suck, because of their confidence, they are perceived to be actually capable, even though they're not. So it's a two-way thing. They don't know they suck, and they present themselves as confident, and then we take them as amazing because they're so confidently doing whatever they're doing.
You just gave a psychological profile of Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah.
She's
and
so
like
confident in her idiocy.
Yes. Pelosi, like most people we see, if they're not completely playing a role, are Dunning-Kruger victims. They have no idea how stupid they are, and they think they're real good and real smart. And then those of us who are very smart and very capable almost never get recognized or achievement or rising to the top of a structure, because people look at just like we were talking about earlier, we both have this thing, and most intelligent people do, where we wonder, like, are we even right? And who knows what the fuck is going on? Like, we realize how much we don't know, and that makes people think that we're stupid, when in fact that's a more intelligent place to exist. So it's fascinating.
So in light of all the craziness that's been going on, and all of these different very confusing events that have been happening, why don't we talk a little bit about what the supposed end game of they is, whoever they are. Like some of the scariest stuff that I've heard, and this is nothing like many people haven't also heard of, that they are pushing towards a one world government.
Definitely.
That they want to unify the currency and make it digital, so that they can zap your account if you're not being a good little commie or whatever.
Right.
And they want to watch you wherever you go. It's not good enough just to track you on your phone, Lindsay. We got to be tracking your mind.
Yes.
We want to know what you're thinking about. We want to get that tech inside your body through our little injection of our vaccine that will heal you.
Right.
That you're hearing lots of things from everyone from David Icke to many other different people who are saying, no, it's not actually a vaccine at all. In the most benign iterations of that, I'm hearing, well, there's just junk like mercury and dead baby parts in there and all kinds of crap, which is probably in a lot of vaccines. Who knows?
It is.
But the nanobot thing is particularly disconcerting, because it's they have computers that are microscopic and they can inject them into your bloodstream, and then what? They just push a button and you drop dead of a heart attack if you say the wrong thing? Or They just know everywhere you're going. They know who you're with, whether you have your cell phone or not. At that point, it doesn't matter. They can monitor your thoughts. Yeah. Your emotions, how you're feeling. And it's like, oof, okay. It does seem that this kind of thing is happening, that they're driving it towards more of a global police state, that they want to monitor and control everybody in the world. And you got to ask yourself, why? What kind of psycho would ever want to do that?
Right.
Like, I couldn't give less of a shit about controlling what you do, Lindsay. Like, but there's some psychos out there that want to control what everybody does.
All over the whole, every single human in the whole world. That's a fucking control freak overdrive. Have a word
the mother of all control freaks. Yeah, just having a fascist country, that's not good enough. That's small potatoes. So let's do the whole world. Why don't we?
Maniacal, perhaps.
I had a theory about the why. Why would they do this? Because, to be honest, a lot of the explanations for why I haven't been very satisfied with. Well, Bill Gates wants to do it because he's crazy. He's power hungry.
Right.
He's evil.
Right.
And like, this like evil villain character wringing his hands. They got some smoky room somewhere and they're all chomping cigars at their Bilderberg meetings or whatever, with a bunch of kids that they've been screwing and sacrificing to Satan or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that you notice some signs of this that seem kind of occultish and weird. And this is not escaped the notice of many people, these secret meetings. And we're hearing stories that have come out about, Jeffrey Epstein and Epstein's Island. I myself saw the drone footage of the dude who flew the drone over the island. And even from the outside, even from the top side, that weird sundial thing, some of the statues there, that weird temple looks kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't recognize those symbols as being any part of any kind of mainstream religion. Not that I understand many mainstream religions, but they look kind of satanic.
Yeah. Right.
And we're here, the Podestas, their freaking artwork.
Dude,
what's up with that?
Like, seriously, if there's anyone out there who has not looked, if you can stomach it, go look at their artwork. It's very clearly about human torture and mutilation and child rape. So obviously,
child rape at the hands of demons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the art paintings that have little children and demonic creatures in those pictures, which makes you wonder, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I'd lock him up on the basis of his taste in art.
Seriously.
Dude, seriously. He's got the one of the statue of the decapitated body that was supposedly in the exact same position as the boy who was murdered by Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer.
Like, how
that's right what I want to put in the doorway of my house.
Yeah.
Hey, come on in. Don't mind the dead kid right in the doorway. It's like, seriously?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. And then there's a story of Pizzagate coming out. And all the cheese pizza, I want order some pizza. And people say that's bullshit, but I don't know about that, because it seems like child sex trafficking does certainly play a role. And I think everybody and their mother damn near believes that Epstein was a part of it. And something was going on the island with, Slick Willie Clinton and the rest of the gang who were taking lots of trips over there doing who knows what. We'll never know, probably.
Yeah.
And then it's cover up. And then he mysteriously dies in jail when the cameras conveniently turn off. Dies.
Who knows?
Right. And like, who knows what really happened there? And then to add to that, this is one of the most clear examples that are damn near irrefutable, is the Microsoft advertisement with Marina Abramovich, that witch who does the openly satanic artwork as an artist.
So artistic.
It's creepy as hell. It's all blood and about cannibalism. There's the ceremonies that she does, or it's just a party. It's a party with celebrities where they have a nice cake, right? And then they have the spirit cooking thing too, which is weird as hell.
Yeah.
But then they have the nice, we're just going to have a cake. Oh, cake. What is it? Like round, square? No, it's shaped like a human body with like blood all over it.
Indistinguishable from one. If you're looking at the cake, you're like, that's a person. And then they cut into it and you're like, and it's cake. And you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah, why not just have a circular cake? Like, what? And
then you see the celebrities like eating, like, hey, big left foot there. It's like, what? dude, I would not eat a cake shaped like a human being. That's
No.
strange. It's
Like,
bizarre.
it was funny when people first started doing the like boob cakes. You know, it's like easy to make
Yeah.
a round
Yeah,
cake
yeah.
and put a like dot on the top or whatever. Like, that's funny. Okay, sure, I guess I'll eat that. But that's like totally lighthearted. It's totally joking. Like, to have a real
Yeah.
full human body and start eating like yeah, it's like cannibalistic. It's disgusting.
Yes. And we're even hearing news about what's that thing when they eat too many people and they start to mess up their physiognomy?
Kuru.
I forget the term. Kuru. Yeah.
Kuru, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is all speculation. It's all periphery. It's all circumstantial evidence. But there's weird things about all these people, these they that want to control everybody. And they want to use technology to monitor and manipulate every single move that you make, no matter where you go. And then there's all this weird occult stuff that's associated with the very same people. And that's led me to a kind of a theory that delves into the religious or the spiritual. So if you'll give me a little bit of time, I could try to lead up to where I'll circle back around to the whole dead body cakes and the John Podestas and all these folks, because I do think that a lot of this stuff is connected to the present day. But I happen to think that this story happened or started a long time ago. In fact, at the very beginning of human history,
Yeah.
with the very first created human beings. And yes, I'm talking about Adam and Eve. All right, so all you atheists out there, just don't get your panties in a bunch, okay? I'm going to bring up some Christian stuff, okay? Just relax.
And I'll just add, if it makes anybody feel better, this is what I always say, is that you can look at this totally, completely, you know, materialistically, like factually, this is what happened. You can look at it symbolically. You can try to imagine what the, like, occult and esoteric implications could be. And you can also look at it psychologically. Like, if we're just talking about the human psyche, you could think about that, too. So if the people out there who don't love the, like, Christian angle want to go from that end, like, that can be fun too. So just, you know, don't cast it all aside for nothing.
Right. It's, I don't know. I sort of consider myself a Christian. I don't know exactly what to call myself because I'm far from a typical Christian.
Me too.
You know, even a lot of Christians, I mean, for those of you that really get turned off by religious people, I totally get you.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Me too.
You know, like you start talking about like, oh, Jesus and this and that. But then it's like you mention something like chakras and they're like, heretic, get out of there, excommunicated, get out of here. And it's like, to me, like, I don't know about that. There seems to be some validity to that as well. So what are you trying to say? The Bible isn't real? The Bible isn't true? Well, I think some of it's true.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of what's written in there, just like a lot of stuff that you would read or listen to on CNN nowadays, and I'm not necessarily equating the two, so please don't take that as an insult, Christian people.
The Bible was CNN.
He said the Bible's fake news.
Okay.
It's open to people's interpretation, and a lot of it is so frustratingly light on the details, like that little, oh yeah, and then Adam and Eve grew up, and then people. Women started having sex with angels, and then there were giants on the earth. Yeah. Anyway, now that we cleared that up, moving on. It's like, whoa,
You're
what?
Like, that was
giants?
The best part. Tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead, they go on for like 46 pages about like the son of this and the son of that and this whole family history. It's like, wait a minute, I want to hear more about the giants.
Yeah. Totally.
So, all right. But there's no question whether you're religious or not, whether you believe in a higher power, a God or Allah or whatever,
right?
That something's wrong with people.
Yeah.
I think that's fairly obvious.
It seems pretty obvious.
For a longest time, I've been so confused about the meaning of life, and I'm hardly the only person. I think everybody at one point in their life looks around and says, you know what? Kind of everything on the earth makes sense and sort of works harmoniously if you could just get rid of all the people.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Like nature seems to regulate itself fairly well without human interference, and this planet would probably be just fine, or probably a hell of a lot better if we weren't around.
Yeah.
So what is wrong with human beings? How is it that we're supposedly more intelligent than other created creatures on the planet, or evolved creatures on the planet, and yet we seem to be screwing things up everywhere we turn? And well, Christians interpret this phenomena as human sinfulness or the fact that people fell from an ideal state that they were to be created at. So let me just run through the very basic story of Adam and Eve as most people seem to understand it, at least as far as I understand. So Adam and Eve, God created this garden in 7 days, had all this beautiful stuff in all the creation, wanted to create Adam and Eve as the first man and the first woman. Beautiful. And then gave them a commandment. Kids, see those 2 trees over there? You got the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You can eat all this stuff, whatever you want. You want some of this food over here, any of this stuff, any of these veggies, fine. Berries, blueberries, strawberries, perfect. See that fruit over there? If you eat of it, you're fucking dead, okay? I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make light of it, because I do think that this is a misunderstanding of what really happened. You know, it makes, frankly, it makes God sound like an asshole.
Yeah,
like,
because you're like, that's the one thing I want to eat now. Like, that's a very intriguing
exactly. Look at the stuff that they try to ban off of YouTube. That's the first thing you want to look at, right? So it's like, it's the way it's framed, or the way people understand it, is just like this test of obedience. I'm going to leave this here, but don't touch it.
Right.
If you touch it, you're done. And then, like, imagine like a kid's party, but even put it in human terms. Like, supposedly God is the most loving creature of all the creatures in existence, unconditional love, but he's going to get pissed and kick you out of the crib if you eat something that he told you not to eat. Well, what was it? You know, what was this thing that was in the middle of the garden that was so poisonous and so toxic to people that if they ate it, they would die?
Top ramen.
You know?
No.
It was top.
It's my guess.
Like, really? Like, you're going to leave a cyanide laced slice of cake in the middle of the floor of your kids' playroom and then be like, bye, kids. I'm going to do a few holes of golf. I'll be back. Hope nothing goes wrong.
You come back. Oh, God, what have you done?
Right, exactly. You're dead now. What the hell? Pack your shit. Get out of the house. Get out of here. Yeah, it makes God look like an asshole. I don't think that's what really happened.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what happened. So what I think happened is that, of course, there's symbolic language in there. I think the reason it was symbolic and written in there's, like, how long ago was the Old Testament? It was like pre-Jesus, so that was.
Well, yeah, and then it was translated, and then it was like put into the, you know, that the Nicene Council or whatever grabbed like which parts they liked, and then that was translated like 10 times. So we've got like a big game of telephone going on too. Yeah, exactly. So that makes it even more frustrating. You got a bunch of like old guys with a stick up their ass who are like, oh, this is a little bit too spicy. We're gonna leave that out. Yeah. This doesn't seem too PC. We're gonna leave that out. We don't
and
want
that
to know
accounts for some of the.
Just cut that out. Yeah.
Right, which is why I look at some of the extracurricular Bible, what do you call those scriptures? The Book of Enoch, the Gnostic Gospels. What's that one that the Catholics believe in that the Protestants don't? The whatever.
Yeah.
But there's other scriptures out there. Some have been discovered fairly recently. I think 1945. Some of them came out. They were just discovered in some cave.
Yeah.
Was it them? Okay.
So.
Okay, but anyway, the point is that how the heck are you supposed to get full and accurate information with such a partial recounting of something that allegedly happened so long ago, and none of us were around to even witness it?
Right. Instead,
we just kind of get echoes of it that kind of reverberate out through time and throughout humanity.
Right.
But if we go back to it, let's see. And I could talk about a lot of this different stuff, but I want to limit it to the central question that I'm trying to address is why is Bill Gates trying to kill all of us?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I love it.
Why does John Podesta have all this weird satanic artwork?
Right. Why are these people aiming to control the world? And can I just add really quickly, because it sprung to mind, not only what we just talked about, the giant telephone game, but also that especially like the Adam and Eve part and, you know, Noah and all that would have been like thousands of years even before that.
Yes.
So even by the time we got the texts, they were old as fuck. Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we look in First Genesis, and if this is a sermon, this is the fucked uppest sermon you've ever heard. from First Genesis 27. Let's back up to 26. I'll do the NIV version just to piss off the Catholics. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over the livestock and the wild animals, all the creatures that move along the ground. All right. So in other words, let's make mankind, let's make human beings the shit, top dog. Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. Who's he talking to?
Yeah. Like angels? It sounds like
He's talking to
gods.
himself?
Yeah. But who's our? He's like more
Is he recording himself?
Story. Yeah.
I believe that who he is talking to is in fact angels. I think the order of creation went something like this. And it does list it above as far as what was created, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that for simplicity's sake, my understanding is that we exist on a whole range of frequencies of which we're only aware of a partial span or band of those frequencies known as physical reality. Right? And yet, everything that was created transcends or goes way beyond just the physical reality that we can see. And any religious person will pretty much tell you that. There's a belief in heaven, there's a belief in hell. Those are like your simplified version, but there's also people that have a little bit more nuanced understanding of spiritual reality and ourselves as spiritual creatures. In fact, the afterlife itself, it's not that we go to somewhere after we die, but we are in fact a walking spirit in a meat bag that falls away at the time of our death, and we continue on our eternal existence. That's basically what I believe. So then it brings up a bunch of questions of, well, what's the purpose of a physical existence in the first place and all this? Why can we just go direct to spirit world? Why we have a life, etc. Those are kind of broader questions. I don't want to bog the story down here because I want to try to keep it topic focused. But I do believe that the first thing that God created was, let's just for simplicity's sake, call it the spiritual world. So you get a physical world, a spiritual world. I do think that it's a lot more complicated than that, but just for the sake of illustration, I'll just talk about it as if it's a binary. And that angels are spiritual creatures. In fact, they're the highest level of spiritual creatures that God created. We cannot see them because we do not have spiritual sight, most of us. A few of us that are lucky seem to have evolved a lot more spiritual sensitivity than others. Some people are like bricks. Don't believe nothing, never seen nothing. Other people, like the kid in the Sixth Sense movie, is like, I see dead people. Right?
Where life is just a constant adventure.
I happen to think that the reason why we can't see spiritual phenomena is because of the fall. And had we not fallen, all of us would have fully open spiritual senses. I do believe that we have not only physical sight, but spiritual sight. We have not only physical hearing, but spiritual hearing. And some people, we even hear accounts that people hear things that aren't there. Well, what is that? Some people see things that aren't there. I don't. I have some kind of spidey sense and some weird stuff has happened to me. But I don't, it's not like I saw anything. And I find it even interesting that even with people with spiritual abilities, I don't think that people can see God even spiritually, which I find quite interesting. But so I think he was talking to the angels. So angels were actually created prior to human beings. Angels were there first. And then God kind of finished all of creation with the cherry on top, which was us, human beings. Adam and Eve were meant to be the, what do you call it? The pièce de résistance of the entire creation, the keystone that kind of completed the whole picture. And that's what human beings were meant to represent, is God's own image. It says in 1 Genesis 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. I have an interesting take on this, that God's not a dude, or not strictly a dude.
God's a hermaphrodite?
I don't think God's a hermaphrodite, but I do think that God is the unionization of masculine and feminine elements in one entity.
He's post-gender.
So
all the post-gender people are going to love that.
Well, they should chill out a bit. I don't quite think of it that way.
I don't think God gives a shit about the label either way, so. You know.
But it is interesting that in the 300 odd references to angels in the Bible, they're exclusively, unless I'm mistaken, referred to as male.
Yeah, you brought that up, in some of our talks before the show, and that I had never, even once, somehow, I've never even considered that, and it is a really fascinating. Why are they all male?
Well, I don't
Not that
know
I'm
that they're all
expecting you
male.
to answer that, but just it's a fascinating philosophical.
I suspect that they may be neither male nor female. And that's
Only
just a guess.
Use he as like a default.
Right, because it's kind of like
sense.
Between masculine and feminine, masculine tend to be the more initiatory of the two sexes, the ones who kind of do things first. So maybe that's accounts for the he. Yeah. Most of us, we refer to God as he. I think of God as dad most of the time, even though at times I will refer to God as mom. Yeah. And a lot of people get into this Mother Earth thing and Gaia, and it's mostly women, which would make sense, because if you think that we were meant to be the personification of God, we were supposed to, all of us, be God walking in the flesh, just as Jesus was, right? So that would mean I would be a personification of all the masculine qualities of God. You would be a personification of all the feminine qualities of God, and that a husband and wife themselves together would represent the totality of God's existence in something called a family, a marriage and a family. And they'd have kids, which is a pattern based off of the original creation, where God blessed them and he said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every little thing that moves on the ground. So those are referred to as the three great blessings. The first one would be fruitful. In other words, grow to maturity and be ready to bear fruit. In a human sense, have kids. Increase in number, obviously have a bunch of kids. And then fill the earth and subdue it. The word subdue is a little harsh. People tend to think of it like, or the other version in the King James, I think, is have dominion over. Yeah. Again, it has this master-slave notion to it. But I think the original plan of God was not for us to be like harsh taskmasters over creation, but to be basically parents.
Caretakers.
Think about even more close than caretakers. I think that God's relationship in comparison with us is very much like a parent to a child. Yeah. And then so too, our relationship to all of creation is to convey that very same thing. So if we're supposed to be walking gods on the earth, then what the hell went wrong? That is picked up in Genesis 3. And again, I'm not going to do too much of the Bible stuff. So atheists, relax, okay?
This is just the beginning.
I got to lay down what the story was so I can give my take on what I think happened back then, and what is still happening even now. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Sound methodology.
Not trying to convert you, okay? Relax. Keep believing whatever you want.
Right. We don't.
Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat of the fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you don't touch it or you'll die. Then what do we get? We get a lie from the serpent. Very interesting. There's so many lies going around nowadays that are prevalent everywhere. You will not certainly die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. This dude could have worked for fucking CNN. It's already dishing the bullshit, even way back then.
He's all up in the wordplay there.
So Eve got hoodwinked and says the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom. She took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened. They realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. And yada, yada, yada. God came back, and he's like, what the fuck? What the hell just happened? Etc. What does that mean?
Can I just
go ahead?
Really
you have
quick?
A point?
Yeah, because I hate that Christianity gets a bad rap, and people are like, the subjugation and oppression of women is rooted in this like lie that it was Eve's fault and that she's the one who fucked up and blah, 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 blah. But I want to point out that every single creation myth that I have looked at, including Native American traditions and all sorts of traditions, have a female failing significantly at the creation of the world or sometime shortly thereafter, and that causing all sorts of chaos afterwards. So there is something that is repeated. So, like, to blame Christianity for female oppression is just possibly wrongheaded, and I just want to throw that out there for anyone who's like pissed off about that as we talk about it.
No, there's even more spicier versions in some of the Gnostic Gospels, which have different accounts of the same story, different roles, different people. Different people involved. But the story that I think is most interesting is the notion that what the fruit actually represented was an illicit sexual relationship. It wasn't an apple. Okay, God didn't just get pissed because somebody bit an apple. Okay, that would make him an asshole. It was a sexual relationship that took place between a human female, the very first, and an angelic creature. Now, I've seen different accounts of this. One version of that was that it was Lucifer himself who seduced Eve, although God had intended Adam and Eve to grow up and eventually to become husband and wife, have kids, give birth to all of humanity. That didn't happen prior to them fully coupling as a husband and wife, as sanctioned by the father, or the father, mother, whatever, the parents. Basically got involved in a relationship before she was ready.
Premarital.
And premarital relationship. So Eve is a teenage mom. She could have been on MTV.
Yeah.
Had her own show.
Dude.
Where she got seduced, and either I've seen different versions that are, some are more or less violent. One is that she just got seduced by this handsome, beautiful creature called Lucifer, who later fell and became, Satan or the devil, or became super ugly later because of the heinous act that he committed. Other versions are more along the lines of a frigging gangbang, where a whole pack of angels basically attacked her and pinned her down and repeatedly raped her.
Fuck.
So it's like, yeah. But
and think about the trauma, the epigenetic trauma that would still exist possibly from if that is what happened, Like if we're all
absolutely
right?
There's different evidence in biblical text that refers to, like when Jesus says that you are of your father, the devil. Well, what does that mean if we supposedly come from God? Well, something seemed to have happened during the fall, if it's true that Eve was raped by either an angel or multiple angels that were here prior to the existence of mankind, that the angel seemed to have passed on certain elements into her, where as soon after it happened, she became afraid and aware of her own nakedness, whereas prior to that, she wasn't even aware that she was naked. She was totally innocent. So I tend to think that during a sexual relationship, it's not simply a physical thing. It's not simply two bodies slapping together, but there are actually spiritual elements that are exchanged from one to the other.
Amen.
You may not want to think about that if you've been riding the cock carousel your whole youthful existence.
For real.
Because then you're wondering, how many spirits have I picked up along the way, or how much spiritual residue? Yeah. But even in a human sense, we can see that people who have had lots of promiscuity kind of have difficulty staying faithful in a later relationship. You don't just kind of shut off the tap on that behavior and just have it like, right now I'm going to be just one man, one woman.
I mean, like, and you can, but you're right. It's like the tendency to stay.
Well, it makes it harder though. You'd have to agree.
Yeah.
So we see some other evidence of these kind of lineally or collectively passed sin, where isn't it interesting that people that are abusers tend to also have been abused themselves when they were children.
Yeah.
You would think that would lead you in the opposite direction, that you'd want to do the exact opposite of what happens to you. And yet you grow up and a lot of people tend to do the same thing.
Totally.
Look at how much of a problem sexual sin, sexual promiscuity, however you want to say it, the issue of sex is still very much prevalent today, and leads to divorces, leads to people cheating on one another, leads to all kinds of fighting, domestic violence situations. I don't even want to know how many people are having sex with their own children. I think if we had accurate numbers on that, it would scare the crap out of us.
I think so too. Growing up and learning about, in a small town, the few people I learned about who had been being raped by their parents, and there was a huge amount, you know? We're talking like a huge amount. And I tell people this and they're like, what was wrong with the place you grew up? And I'm like, I don't think it was different there than anywhere else.
No.
I think it was just small enough that we knew each other. And so we learned these things. And like in a city or a bigger place, you don't learn about it necessarily. But it's like that is disturbing. And I think it's highly underestimated, like you say.
If that much of an intimate violation happens to you especially when you're young and you can't comprehend even, who are you going to tell? Mm-hmm. Like how much of that is really going to get out? Well, it's despicable. Everybody knows it's despicable. Even hardened criminals know that that's despicable.
Yeah.
Like the people that are child rapists or that abuse or kill children, they get it worse when they go to prison.
Yeah.
Because even they have an honor code that, yeah, I could kill adults, I could be a mass murderer, I can rob banks, but if you harm a kid, you're getting it in prison.
Which I have some weird respect for that code, even though it's horrifying to think about. Like, I'm like, good job, guys.
No, but I think that it naturally disgusts most of us who aren't total pervs. Like the thought of violating a child, the idea of kiddie porn and this kind of weird stuff, the idea of child sex trafficking just turns our stomach and it really makes us violently angry.
Yes.
Like you want the worst possible thing to happen to these people because they're committing the worst possible crime. And I think the reason for that is because that same crime was the origin of every other crime.
Yeah.
That's my personal belief.
This makes so much sense to me, and I'm so glad that you are unveiling this. And I hope people listening are, letting go enough of the trappings to sort of just think about at the very least the symbolic side of it. But it ties into psychology, symbology, material reality, and spirituality, all of them if you want to let it go that far. And that's very fascinating to think about.
Well, that's why I'm trying to tie it back forward to our present day circumstances as much as possible. So it's not just some kind of story in a book that was written a long time ago.
You're kind of like, who wrote this fucked up story and why do they want us to read it? Like, it's crazy.
Right. But you can imagine if it was actually Eve getting seduced or raped, why these old guys would leave that part out. Like, this doesn't sound too holy. You want to leave that book out of the canon.
Right.
We'll just symbolize it instead. We'll say it was a fruit. But then it's like you're burying information. If that indeed did happen, that's kind of important to know what did happen, because these kinds of things tend to be repeated on and on, even to the present days. I used to wonder, like, what the hell's been God doing the last 2,000 years? He went fishing or something. It seems like nothing much happened from the days of the Bible. He used to do all these miracles and signs and wonders. And it's like, all right, crickets. What's going on? Is he even still around?
Sleeping.
Hello? Yeah. He fucked off and went to another universe and left us here alone. He died. Nietzsche, is that right? He's dead.
Yeah.
Like all these different theories have gone around. But no, I think that this stuff is still going on to the present day. Here's an anecdotal story, but it ties into the same general trend of thought. Buddy of mine, he's a gay dude, and he was raped in the shower when he was a little boy by his uncle. Terrible thing to happen. His uncle's a big hairy guy. Guess which type of men this guy is most attracted to now as a grown man?
He likes the bears.
He does. And he believes that's because of his uncle. And again, why would he want to do the same thing? Why would he be attracted to that thing that violated him? Dude, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But it happens. And you probably can think, the people that are listening, think of other stories that are similar, and try to make sense of different pieces of evidence that you find in your own life that might corroborate this,
right?
If it's at all true. But then the question goes to, well, why, let's just say if it was just Lucifer that did it, and maybe he got a bunch of his buddies into the act later, or even in subsequent generations after Adam and Eve, she gave birth to kids. And, there's questions like, well, where the hell did all these other people come from? They're marrying off the people.
Yeah.
I have different theories of that. Yes, they evolved from apes, but these are the first two people that are endowed with spirit. And the rest of them were just kind of like walking ape creatures. But whatever, that's not even important.
Yeah.
It could be several generations subsequent to that. Lucifer got his buddies involved into having sex with female humans, and that's sort of alludes to the giant thing. I don't know why they were referred to giants, or just giant in stature, or literally like 40 feet tall. doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like some
'Cause you
Game of
still have to
Thrones shit.
give birth.
Ah! Stomping around on the planet.
And like maybe, but yeah, it's unclear what that wording means or what symbolism it might represent.
But one of the things that fascinates me is, why would this being do this? Why would this Lucifer throw a monkey wrench into God's plan so badly it would fuck everything up for literally all of human history since then?
With so much pain and suffering tied up in it as well. It's not just like, oops, okay, well, whatever. It's like, holy fuck, look at all this fucking violence and horror. Like, Jesus.
Right.
Whew.
Well, I have a theory, and it has to do with the nature of angels themselves. How much do you know about angels? And I'm not saying I know a lot. I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, what do you know?
I know a few of their names. After reading, especially Enoch, I know more names, but mostly I was familiar with Gabriel and Michael, the archangels. And then I understood there was like a hierarchy, and there's other types of sort of angelic beings below them. But what's interesting too, and connects sort of with part of what you were saying at least, is that I know that angels are often referred to as sort of like snake-like or feather-like, and birds and reptiles in our experience are of a similar sort of heritage too. And that same type of archetype is connected with a lot of the, watchers and the civilizing
archons,
and the civilizing agents that always came after like the flood or whatever, to various remnants of the flood people or whatever. So I'm like, that's very interesting that all angels are sort of snake-like, but then that one in the garden was snake-like, and that like you said, that supports your idea that was an angel.
Well, you also see accounts that they appear as young men in white robes too. There's a story about the friggin' naked babies with the harps.
Oh, yeah.
The cherubims. But
shooting arrows and shit.
Okay, so I do believe that, yes, first of all, they're purposely created as spiritual creatures only, not physical. They were never meant to have a physical body.
Yeah.
Also, yes, they are hierarchical in nature. They have organized ranks. It mentions that they helped God to create everything from the very beginning. So they were around for a long time. Who knows how many millions, billions of years or whatever, prior to the birth of Adam and Eve, prior to whenever human beings came along. It was just them and God. And they were closest to God than anything else in the creation, right up to the point where human beings were created. Now think about what that might do in terms of your angelic psychology. Yeah. You're king of the heap. You're top dog. You're the shit. You help God make everything. God loves you more than anything else. Yeah. And then one day, these two little friggin' pieces of meat come along called babies, named Adam and Eve. And the angels are like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And then God says,
what are you doing here?
Yeah, these are my children. They're actually my children. You guys are great soldiers. You're good employees.
You're good employees.
You kiss ass really well. You're good middle managers. But actually, these are my kids. They're to be just like me. And even though the angels had all this knowledge and all this ability, and I do think the angels are highly intelligent creatures, I do think that they do not possess the one quality that human beings singularly were meant to possess, and that's the ability to love. Angels do not have the capacity to love anywhere near the degree to which human beings, again, unfallen, unfucked up human beings, were meant to have. It's kind of hard to look at a modern day current human being and all these idiots bashing each other in the head and chucking bricks and looting and setting fires. Oh yeah, we're loving, we're just like God. But I do believe that that's far from what we were meant to be. But the original design was we were supposed to be just as loving as God the Creator. And in fact, we were meant to be the conduit through which God would love all of the creation. I don't think that God meant to love things directly. I believe that God meant to love everything only through human beings. So my perception is that God is not on Mars right now because human beings are not on Mars right now.
Yeah.
God is only where human beings are. And that was by design, that we're meant to be the highest in creation, not because we're the smartest, not because we're the most capable, not because we're famous, not because we have all this money, but because potentially anyway, we would be a being that's a perfect representation, a perfect facet of God's giant diamond.
Yeah.
Through which the little glint of light that was perfect love, that was shining through that one facet, of the feminine characteristics of God named Lindsay.
Mhm.
And that's who you would be. That would be your fundamental identity.
It
And
makes
whoever, all the rest of the bullshit, like what job you have or how much or how little money you have or where you live or what skin color you are, none of that shit really matters. The one thing that does matter is that God created you uniquely to be you, and you're supposed to be a perfect representation of that aspect of God.
I love this, and it also is supported, or it supports the idea that we are supposed to have like that dominion over the earth or whatever. It's like if we're literally conduits for God's, energy or love or whatever to come through into the earth, then that is dominion over the earth, right?
So if we were meant to be children of God, and we were all meant, humankind itself was meant to be a giant cosmic family of God, right? Ideally, where we're all completely hooked up with God, in constant communication with God, resonating kind of like a mind meld with God, except not just the mind, but the heart and the emotions and everything else. So that everything that we felt, God would feel. Everything God felt, we would feel. So if you were completely hooked up with God, I was completely hooked up with God. If I did something to harm you, that would make God sad, and I would feel that same sadness. So it would also hurt me.
Perfect empathy.
Yes. So it's not, I don't think that necessarily I'd be reading your mind and shit like that,
Yeah.
but I would have a much greater sensitivity of how my words and how my behavior affects you. Because if it started to do something that was harmful to you, I myself would feel some of that pain. And then people would just simply not want to hurt each other on that basis. So it's not necessarily that we're just, like fused together like the pilots in the Pacific Rim movie. I don't know if you ever saw that, but
No.
it's similar idea where, okay, so anyway, we be children of God. We be walking representations of God's love on the earth or in the solar system or wherever. And God's eternal presence would be constantly active within our mind and our spirit. We'd always know what God is thinking. God can see and will know everything that we do anyway, even now. Well, we'd have a much greater awareness of that in the ideal scheme of things, right? So how would you fuck that up if you were a resentful angel, not wanting to take second fiddle to these little meatballs who can't do shit? And you know all this knowledge, you've been around for millions of years, you have helped create all these different cosmoses and all these different things, and you've gotten all these pats in the head from God, and then God says one day that these are my children and I love them more than you. Probably wasn't as harsh as that.
Yeah.
But I imagine that
sad.
But it wasn't meant to be, because even though after the creation of Adam and Eve, God didn't love the angels any less than he did before.
And that's what
as a matter of
say
fact, he was getting ready to love them even more, because up until then, let's use an analogy. If they were getting God's love out of a little garden hose turned half on, like because that wasn't part of the original design for God to love things directly. God was only to love things most powerfully through human beings, and God was hooking up an apparatus to give a big fire hose of love towards the angels, but they fucked it up before he ever finished making it by engaging in a sexual relationship with the first human being, infecting her with antagonistic angelic elements, and then she passed it on to her husband. And now it's in the lineage, and now it gets passed down throughout the lineage, and we're all stuck with it.
Yeah.
So I feel like the basic characteristics of human fallen nature are decidedly angelic in their nature. We think more like angels than we do human beings because we've had that spiritual DNA basically poisoned. It's been tainted.
Which would be similar to psychopathy, right? Because like as you were saying, there's not like a love and an empathy there necessarily, which doesn't make them bad or whatever. That's like kind of their role and their nature, and maybe that's why we have some elements of that in us. And then I also was thinking, you're talking about us as like, or Adam and Eve as like babies, they're children of God. There's these new creations, and an angel who is however fucking old comes down and rapes that is child rape. Then like, is this where child rape comes from?
And if God was supposed to have a direct hookup with Adam and Eve, and then the angel comes along and interferes with that by poisoning the well, then it severs that connection that we were originally meant to have with God, which is why people don't believe in God. I think in the original conception of things, the idea of not believing in God would be a fucking joke. It's kind of like not believing in yourself.
Yeah.
because we would feel God all throughout our body all of the time. It would be such a powerful conscious awareness that to deny it would be stupid.
Yeah.
That's kind of like saying I don't have a mind or something,
Yeah.
like
You
I don't
have no
think,
hand.
I don't have awareness. But you would know that God is and then you would feel God's emotions all the time. I don't necessarily know the degree to which, the exact phenomenology of this. Obviously, this is all speculation on a possible ideal that was never realized. But the fact that we're not fully connected with God the way we're meant to be also means that we're not fully connected with each other, which makes it easy for us to commit all kinds of horrible acts against one another and not give a shit.
Yeah.
Say mean things, rape, kill, murder, blah, blah, blah. And then even the angels themselves cut themselves off when they cut us off from God. They also cut themselves off from God in a way because they cut off the source of God's love that was supposed to also come to them, you stupid fucks. So that might account for the snakes and demons kind of thing, where not all the angels fell, evidently, because even in the Bible, I believe it mentions that about a third of them fell and 2/3 of them didn't. I don't know the specific numbers. I don't know exactly how many the angels were, but there are still angels that didn't take part in the gangbang, so to speak. They said, nah, I'm cool.
I'm good with that. I don't need to fuck kids.
But then the rest of them that did later became known as demons, or collectively known as Satan. I don't think of Satan as a particular entity like Lucifer equals Satan. I think of it more like the spiritual mafia. You got maybe the Godfather, and then you got all the, you got Vito and, and Vinny and Tony and all the rest of them flying around fucking shit up.
Well, that's in the book of Enoch that I'm reading, at least says Satans in plural. And so it is.
Oh, does it? Okay. Because I do think of them as a collective. When you refer to Satan, you're talking about all of the bad demons, all these demonic creatures. Now, let's bring it all the way back to the present day. If you think everything I said was bullshit, think about this, okay? Those demons were pissed because God created a creature that was going to be higher than them. And if there's anything these motherfuckers care about, it's being high on the totem pole. They totally love hierarchy. They love being this, they all want to fight to be the CEO, whatever, right? The top dog. They want to be, that's something I think originally wouldn't naturally appeal to humanity unfallen, because we're already children of God. What the hell's better than that?
Yeah.
So whether you're picking rice out of rice paddies or you're a president of a country, would be immaterial. You would feel like God loves those two people equally.
Yeah.
There's not like one better than the other. The basis of God's love for us isn't how smart or how dumb we are, or what we do as a profession, or how capable or incapable we are. It has nothing to do with that. Like, do you love one of your kids more than a different kid? Obviously, think about it. Those of you that have families, you really like pit your kids in some kind of hierarchy in terms of which one you love more. If it's not even true for human beings, why would it be true for God? Right. I don't think it is. And yet angels do think like that, because that's their only conception, I think, because they don't really understand what love is. And they were never able to find out what love is because they fucked up the source of love before it could even be created. That they're kind of stuck in this diseased state. So they diseased us, and they also diseased themselves. And I think, what are they trying to do? I think that, okay, bring it back to the whole 5G, the whole SpaceX, satellites in outer space, trying to create this cloud, this grid of technology where everybody has their nanobots in them. Everybody's hooked up. Everybody's constantly monitored and controlled by these evil men trying to do these evil technological things. Because I was like, why technology? Why technology? I think that these fucking demonic creatures are trying to take the place of God. But in relationship to human beings, by using technology to get inside of our body to control us in a perverted approximation of the type of relationship they think God was trying to establish with us from the beginning. They're trying to get inside of your head. Well, God's always inside of your head, right?
Right.
They're trying to see everything that you do. Well, God always sees everything that you do. The big difference there, and this is a huge difference, is that God loves you intimately, and these motherfuckers hate you.
Yeah. Right.
They think it's all about control and manipulation when love is nothing like that. Dominion through love does not mean controlling people and fucking with them and forcing them to do things. So
I'm 100% with you. In fact, the plot of my not fictional novels rests entirely on that premise.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then with the, I'm less sure about this. Not that I'm totally sure about any of this, because some people are listening to me like, all right, that sounds crazy. But everything sounds crazy nowadays. So just add it to the craziness.
It seems absolutely, I mean, this is why I wrote novels about it, is because I feel like, we have the whole story of Prometheus and, technology being introduced to humans via this, fallen angel. And then we keep getting these things where people, especially people who are working on it, talk about like other dimensional intelligences, like enlightening them on how to do this, and like getting flashes of like inspiration on how to like better basically create horrifying technology that's gonna subdue humanity, if not like kill it entirely. And it's like, well, why are we doing this over and over again? Well, we seem to be being fed from another source, from some spiritual source, and it doesn't seem like a good one. It seems like an evil one.
It doesn't seem one that like us, right? It seems like it hates us,
right?
Actually.
And so why would they do that? Like you said, to replace God, to prove to God that he's not the shit or whatever, and that they can do it better or something, or that his creation, are corruptible and will go along with it willingly. That's also a spitting in the face like of God.
Also, if you take into account that if it's true that these are sexless creatures, it also sheds some new light on why all the tranny stuff has been popping up recently, and how come just yesterday, there was like, everyone knew that you're either a man or a woman. You're either born male or female. And then suddenly like, oh, there's 57 genders. No, there's 112 genders.
Yeah.
No, there's no gender. No, there's pan gender. It's like, what?
And to be honest, there were always transgender, transsexual people, and no one gave a shit. I mean, some people give a shit,
right?
And some people were violently hatred, just like people are violently hateful towards anything in the world. And most people didn't give a shit, and it just wasn't, nobody fucking cared. And now it's like something that we need to obsess about and have children's story time about, and like, okay.
But it occurred to me that maybe
this is the most important thing we can think of now, I guess.
Right. Maybe these demonic creatures are still so pissed that they're basically getting cast back in line because of human beings, because they don't understand what the system is designed to do. They're trying to kick God out of the relationship, take God's place, and then force us into their position by making us all transsexual.
Yeah.
Like, see, this is how we are. We're going to take over. We're going to push you guys down. And we're going to make you confused about who you are. See how you like it. And it just boggles my mind. Like, really? You're still pissed? How long has it been now? Like, talk about holding a grudge. Jesus.
Come
like,
on.
Seriously, if anything, we should be pissed. You fucked up our shit. And at least you had a normal existence before we came along, and you guys like lost your shit because it's just I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're resentful?
Like, how
funny.
Fucking petty.
Right.
Jesus.
You brought up the thing with Eve taking the blame for the fall, but in a way, I think Lucifer takes the blame for it. He came up with this shit before she even knew about it.
True.
He's the one who threw the monkey wrench. It's his damn fault. Why is it Eve's fault?
Right.
So
well,
it's
people like to argue. They're like, yeah, but I mean, why couldn't she eat from it? And like, why? Like, he was just trying to help expand her mind, or like give her the things that God was hiding from her because he's a jealous control freak. And it's like, there is that way of reading it, I guess. But I think I'd be pretty happy in a garden without any, hunger or pain or suffering, or like the death and childbirth or whatever, all the shit that comes along with fucking getting kicked out of the garden. What did we get in return? Understanding that we were naked? I mean, I'd rather take the garden.
Yeah. Actually, I think maybe the actual incident of the fall itself was so minor that it was barely even noticeable. It was just like a tiny infraction in the mind of Lucifer that got passed on to Eve. But then it's like, if you have a set trajectory that you want things to go, and at the very inception, the arc of your trajectory is off by even a hair. Yeah. Spiral that forward millions of years, and you're going to be way off base. So I don't think that they were necessarily all this evil, like devil, Satan, like sacrificing kids initially, but it may have spiraled into that kind of like a snowball going down a hill as you have more evil begetting more evil and kind of exponentially just falling over and over and over to the point where, I mean, hell, at one point, God, this is sad, but it's mentioned in the Bible, God was so bummed out about how fucked up people were, actually grieved and regretted ever creating us. That is pretty low. If your
That's
kid is such a fuck up
Yeah.
that in a moment of weakness, you're like, man, I just wish this kid was never born.
Dude.
But luckily didn't give up.
I can imagine the same thing. I was wondering, you know, about our elite and whether or not they're actually just horribly stupid and this is how fucked up shit got. I can imagine this with the angels too, where they're like, all right, dude, okay, let's go like rape Eve. It's going to be funny. We're going to pull one over on God or whatever. And then like a couple, like 1,000 years later, they're like, oh shit. Look at this. Look at those giants we created. They're like fucking the world up. Like, sorry. Like, just then like hide. That's not what we meant. But I don't actually think again that that's actually what happened. But I can imagine that scenario being pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean,
ruined all of eternity. Sorry.
I'm not really of a frame of mind to be sympathetic towards Satan's motivation. I'm kind of like, well, fuck you, asshole. But
Totally.
you know, it's just. It's a crazy story, but I mean, at least it gives a little bit more context on the basic notion of, well, Bill Gates is just an evil power monger. Well, you could say, well, yeah, he's an evil power monger because he's being manipulated by demonic entities that still have a grudge over something that happened long prior to Bill Gates coming around, which is like, okay, but why are they only going through this rich and powerful people? Well, they're not going through you because we can't influence shit. I don't have billions of dollars or billions of dollars. You know, if you were going to control the planet, who are you going to control it through? You're going to pick the people that have the most ability to influence. And that would be the rich and powerful, wouldn't it?
But I mean, they also have. I do believe we have free will, and I've experienced it, and I think that those people have asked for this attachment or entity working with, you know, partnership or whatever, and regular people don't generally go asking for demonic intercession in their life or, you know, demonic attachment or whatever. And so I think there is something to that. I bet any one of us could go out and sacrifice a child in the name of whatever demon and ask to be sort of like aligned with that demon, and probably we'd have suddenly weird ass shit going on. But I don't suggest it.
Oh, if you think that these demons are not lying to Bill Gates just as much or more that they're lying to everybody else, I'm sure that they've got it wrapped up in his head, or Soros, or any of these fuckers.
Yeah,
they're in their little Bohemian Grove rituals. And they probably got the story spun around so ass backwards that they think they're heroes. They think they're saviors of the planet. The demons don't appear to demons as them. They probably appear as like all light and holy and beautiful creatures, you know?
Yeah.
They're bullshit artists. I'm sure they're lying to them. Oh, yes, they have some stupid, twisted rationale for why sacrificing a kid is actually good.
Yes.
Why killing 7/8 of the planet is actually going to be a healing element for the planet, and not just like wantonly genociding most of the people on the earth. I'm sure that whatever they think, they don't think that they're evil.
Right.
They think they're the saviors. They probably all have God complexes because the fucked up angels probably have the same thing, as evidenced by the fact that they want to take over your mind and basically kick God out of the way. But I mean, so all of that is really scary. I just wanted to finish with a little bit of hopeful news. Not that I have too much of it, but like, God's watching all of this if God exists. And supposedly God's the most powerful being in the cosmos. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus came along to try to unfuck this situation. He made some progress, but done got himself killed. It's delayed the shit for another 2,000 years. And I apologize for my potty mouth for all you people that
they're used to it.
It's a very bad habit. It's a bad habit.
They know.
I by no means mean to denigrate Christians or any other religious people, because I am one of them, even with my potty mouth. So, you know, if swearing's a sin, then yeah, okay, stick that somewhere down the list after child sacrifice, at least, please. Yeah. I'll clean up my potty mouth once we can stop, you know, child sex trafficking or something.
Right.
Right.
I'll try my best. Well, it's interesting on previous shows, I just had on Phoenix Aurelius towards the end of season 3 a couple times, and he was doing live what is called IDF investigation. It uses sort of radionics, and it like investigates the intrinsic data field that is everywhere. However you want to think about that, and there's like buy into it, don't buy into it, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. But it was interesting that we did some investigation into Bill Gates, and according to the IDF investigation, Bill Gates is working with demons, specifically the demon Baal, and that that's within like 90, and it was like 98% accurate out of 100 or something, and so we narrowed it down to that, and that's fascinating to me. And like you said, I don't think these beings are all the stories we hear and all of the parables show that these beings are, like you said, tricky, and they're super intelligent, been around for who knows, millions of billions, whatever, how long, in infinite time, basically, and they're just smarter and craftier than us, and so I'm sure they promise all sorts of things to little Billy Gates, and that in the end, he's going to be the one who gets fucked by it. There's this guy, who used to get swords poked through him by, like, doctors and scientists, and they'd poke it through his heart, and they'd poke it through his, like, everywhere on his body, trying to understand how does this guy get, like, these swords poked through him and not die. It's on film. You can go look it up. It's, like, documented. They tried so hard to disprove it. They couldn't. And he said, I work with these demons, and they, allow it to go through without harming me. And finally, people who kind of believed him instead of thinking he was crazy were like, well, what makes you think, like, they're, always gonna, like, be true to that? And he's like, that's our deal. Like, they have to or whatever. And then one day he does it and dies. And it's like, they got bored with you, dude. Like, why you trust a demon? Like, this
you
is
got
what's
punked.
Yeah.
You got used and punked by a demonic entity. Congratulations.
They got some worship and some attention for a while, and then it got boring, and they were like, kill this thing. Kill this toy. On to the next.
Right.
Like, you're not going to come
then
out
it's
on
like,
top.
How is this all going to resolve? Well, the end of the Bible is fairly clear that God's going to clean this shit up eventually.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions as far as why it's taking so fucking long.
Yeah.
There has to be something with the timeline, I don't know.
Yeah.
The short answer is, like, you would think, like, well, if God saw there maybe I don't want to open this can of worms because it invites a whole new discussion, but it's like, well, if God saw that Lucifer was going to do this, why did he just smash him flat on the spot? Like, no, you don't, fucker. Dead. Well, for one thing, it's a eternal spiritual being, and it's kind of hard to kill something that's eternal. Otherwise, you'd violate the principle of your own creation.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think that you cannot make a perfect cosmos, a perfect creation, and just kill things that get in the way. There's the issue of free will, which I do think angels have as well as human beings.
Yeah.
And it's not just a function of obedience. I think eventually God's plan is to have all of us and all of even these fucked up demons eventually will repent and come back to God. A lot of explaining. You need a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah.
But I do think eventually they're going to be like Biff in the Back to the Future movies, like scrubbing our cars and shit. Like, sorry.
Sorry. Kind of fucked up. Sorry, I raped your baby or whatever. Jesus.
I'm making light of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
hope so.
eventually this stuff is all going to get wrapped up. I don't know how quickly, but there's a lot of people that say this is pretty weird apocalyptic stuff happening nowadays.
Yeah.
Does seem to be that we're in the last days, but please keep in mind it's explicit that we're talking about the last days of evil, not the last days of humanity.
Yeah.
So humankind will go on.
Well,
You may not, but humankind will.
yeah. No, I like that, and it's actually very hopeful. And I always look at it like, there's kind of three parts to everything. Like, there's the three blessings you talked about. There's the three, I guess, institutions that were laid out in the Bible or something. There's always like trinities of it. Everything's a trinity.
Yeah.
The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, all this stuff. And I look at it as there's like a creation, there's a process, and then there's the sort of end finalized result, and we see it in alchemy as well. There's always this 3-part thing. And so we're in the process part, and it's messy, and it feels chaotic or whatever. But also, like, if you want your creation, your beings, whatever, your kids, if you're a parent, to turn out well, you don't want them to turn out well because you forced them to. You want them to turn out well because they genuinely developed into that thing, you know, and especially if you have free will, that's tricky to pull off. You kind of, I think, have to go through like every iteration of other possibilities before you end up like, okay, I fully, with full knowledge, full gnosis, choose this thing, you know, based on all my experience and evidence. And so I kind of look at it that way for myself, if that helps anyone out there struggling with why we're going through all this hellish torture.
Yeah, I do think
torture,
it's hopeful. You know? I have faith that it's, for as bad as it looks and for as scary as it's going to get, I do think that this is symptomatic and emblematic of God finally ripping the evil roots that have tendrils that have gone back to the very beginning of humanity out of this world and getting rid of it so that the world could be as originally, or the cosmos, I should say, should be as it was originally intended to be. I do think that that is the intention behind all of this calamity that is going to be happening. I'm not super psyched about being alive during it. I kind of wish I was born, you know, just kind of wish you were born 10 million years from now after the shit's been all cleaned up. But, you know, on the other hand, I do believe that we were all born now for a reason.
I do too.
Not 100 years ago, not 2 million years from now, but right now. So we may have a front seat to the fireworks, but we were meant to have that seat. Our name was on it.
I'm absolutely with you on that, and I think that it's very important for people to hear and reflect on and think about themselves too, because it's really scary, I think, to look forward and not only just to see like where we're at and how bad it is, but to wonder if like how much worse does it get and what happens next. There's a lot of fear wrapped up in that, but it's interesting, you know, when you get to this place where you have realized for yourself, if you do believe, you know, that you're a spiritual being and that you're here for a reason, then it takes a lot of the fear out of it, honestly. Like, you're never going to stop in the moment itself being fearful, perhaps, you know, with the tigers, like, leaping at you. You're not going to remove that fear. But if you know that you're a body of spirit and that you know, exist beyond that, then it's a bit less, it's easier to face at least, and it takes away some of the fear. So I think it's a very hopeful way of looking at things.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, did we cover it? Are we good? Are there other things we want to address?
I think that's a good place. I think that's a good point to stop on.
Yeah, it's a very hopeful place to stop, at least. And I mean, because we could go on forever about all the intricacies and the philosophical questions and all of this, which is fun to do. And maybe you want to come back someday and talk about more aspects of that. But until then, where can people find more from you? The Wordtastic. Did I get that right?
Wordtastic is the kids show. Yeah, you can find that in any podcatcher. WORDTASTIC. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff.
No.
It's a spy show for kids aged roughly 8 to 12. That's fun. It teaches them vocabulary words in the context of going out on fun spy missions. It's kind of like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, except with a vocabulary focus instead of a geography focus.
Super fun.
And it's a podcast. It's fun.
That's cool.
But yeah, otherwise you can find me on Facebook. I'm in the Eyes Open group.
Yeah.
You know, if you had any, what I'm curious about is I kind of gave a general overview. That's very basic stuff because I don't have any specialized information. I'm not a specialist. I don't have particular special knowledge in any kind of academic field or medical field or whatever. But if there are people that have heard this, I'm curious how much evidence you found in your own life and in your own research that may be pieces of the puzzle that maybe bring a little bit more resolution to some of these generalities. That may be like, hey, well, maybe there is something to this because this Marina Abramovich was in the Microsoft commercial. That's not bullshit. It did happen, and it's weird as heck.
Yeah.
Everyone thought it was weird. They were so outraged by it, they had to pull it.
Yeah. It had massive, horrifying, like, negative response to it. People commenting, thumbs downing it. Like, the majority of the response was so negative that they...
Oh, yeah. Like, it was like... They were like, if you get a thumbs down to thumbs up ratio that's even close to 50-50, that means people hated it.
Right.
This was like 3,000 thumbs up and like 24,000 thumbs down.
Yeah.
Like, people hated it.
I loved that people hated it. I was like, wow, that many people see, you know, like, because not that long ago, not that many people would see that. So that made me really happy. But you might be interested in some of the people listening are going to be remember these shows, but I've done a couple shows with Gary Wayne, and if you haven't heard of him or read his books or seen those shows or he does a ton of shows, and he is an amazing resource. And I think I don't want to speak for him, but as far as I learned from him and talking with him, he would agree with a lot of what we have laid out here, and he goes into much greater academic detail of like the actual, you know, references to different parts of the Bible that like support all these claims. And so he's an amazing dude. So there's one. But yeah, if anyone listening also has expertise, ideas to add or whatnot, that'd be fascinating to continue the conversation either in Eyes Open or on this episode or wherever.
Yeah, let's continue the cosmological detective work, trying to bring pieces to the puzzle together and see if we can crowdsource a picture.
Absolutely. I love conversations like this, and I love that sort of overview you gave, and especially, you know, tying it into the technology obviously is my own sort of passion, and so that was fun, and so thank you for doing that. And what are your final words of wisdom that you want to leave people with, or the ideas that you want people to continue thinking about as they walk away tonight?
I think that the point I just made prior to that, in terms of bringing your own particular expertise to this notion, not that this is like I need to provide the overall blueprint that everyone else fills in the details kind of thing. I don't think my self-estimation is not that high, but I'm very curious as far as anyone else, because I'm not a biblical scholar, even I don't know that much about even different scriptural works, or a lot of people are into arcane texts and that sort of thing. And those people, if there's anything in there, even in other cultures, that may corroborate some of the even echoes of a similar notion, I'd be very curious to hear what they were. But I mean, there has to be something going on. We came from somewhere, we're going somewhere. There has to be some overarching answer. And I do believe that the answers lie beyond the physically evident. I think that we're talking about events that transcend what we can see and smell and hear with our physical senses. There's something going on behind history, behind the phenomena that exists around us. And I think that's the real movers and shakers of what's happening in the physical universe around us, and the stuff that we're seeing on the news every day. Absolutely. So that's about what I have for wisdom.
It is wisdom, and I love it. It's like the red thread that ties the beginning, through the process and to the end, and it's fascinating to look at those things. So I love it. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Steve Schneider. Steve, thank you so much for being here tonight. It has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, looking around you, what do you see? Do you see the results of your hard work on your inner self and your outer accomplishments paid off? Do you see relationships that are thriving because of the consistent focus on your own and others' health and well-being? You should. If you don't, guess who's responsible for creating something new? You are. God is rad. He's there rooting for you. He's got a hand out to catch you and soften the fall. He's got some fingers to prod you in the best direction. He's even got some excellent words to share with you, whispered in your heart while you're quietly attentive and listening. But he's not going to do shit for you if you sit around pretending you are owed, hoping for someone else to do it for you, or creating lists of excuses why you cannot. It is true. You cannot, if that's what you've decided. And if you've decided that instead, then that is what you'll do. No one has an easy time, and no one can promise it will be anything but grueling hard, but God's got some rests lined up for you along the way as well. You'll find the shady seat and sip of water on the way up. Keep moving, and until you've created wellness and bliss all around you in every direction, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Nasty motherfucker with a hook and a sickle. Brought to you advertisement, bone plated nickel. Fire rate automatic smash from the get-go. Snack on the whack fermented flesh disco. Add abracadabra, archaic altars don't slapper. Hey, making jabbers with reality backwards. Hunting rap nerds, bodyguard collected actors. Munitions are famished, let them feast upon the dapper. Bloody bibs and muddy kicks, feasting on amygdalas. Iron fist, tyrant shit, APO will rip you up. The rhyme rainmaker, Bane style backbreaker. Genghis-Khan depleted uranium satellite lasers. Cloaked in anonymity, I know you never heard of me. No rusted tools used for Crowley style surgery.
Dissect a whole set, God body. God taught me to dissect the whole body. When it gets sloppy, I'ma get there. Rhymes rare like steak, get crushed like crates to create 52 states. And it's Baghdad. Dusted towels, no rags. Straight melt dash. Dust the ash, turbans while the niggas perkin'. It's on purpose. My service touches the sun's surface, and rainbows touch serpents. My light all night shines so bright. I'm a star for eons, Hollywood's for peons, cause they try to copy the same shit we on. Hey, I ain't done yet, lungs depleted and can't breathe, can't believe it. Trying to seek it while trying to peep it, it's a secret. Now you're nobody, label somebody, trying to claim John Gotti. It's yours truly,